Wow, what a headline from the Daily News. The FBI warns black identity extremists pose a growing threat to law enforcement. And they go on to detail all the stuff happening in Ferguson and Dallas and just day-to-day encounters all over the country where black people are just totally rejecting the authority of cops to stop them at a traffic stop, ask them for ID. We just saw a video yesterday. The chick said she shot a cop because she was afraid the cop was going to shoot her. So there's no doubt there's an enormous amount of black on cop, black on white cop hostility in this country that we document here all the time. We have a very long playlist with that in it. But let's do what they do on the talk shows, use one of their terms. Let's unpack this term, black identity extremists, because there's so much in there. Let's talk about the expression black identity. Look, there is no question that for a large number of black people in this country, being black is the central organizing feature of their life. And it's not just Shannon Sharpe talking about how, he can't, no matter what else there is about him, his religion, his income, where he lives, being black is something he carries with him 24/7. That's his excuse for doing the black identity thing. But we see it expressed in every aspect of life. We have black colleges, black high schools, black grade schools, black charter schools, black churches, black funeral homes, black barbershops. What about black TV, black newspapers, black radio? What about black award shows? How many black movies have we seen over the last couple of years? How many dozens of black movies have we seen? I use this quote in my book, White Girl Bleed, a lot from Jamie Foxx, who talked about he was always really happy to leave the set of a movie because he got to go back to his crib and hang out with the fellas, because he didn't like hanging around with white people and acting white. He just liked going around, hanging around with the fellas and doing whatever it is the fellas do that make them different from white people. So this whole black identity thing, it's central to a whole lot of people's lives in a way that is completely foreign to a whole lot of white people. And we just finished 8 years of it with Obama in the White House. I still believe a lot of people really don't get their mind around how much the federal government, top to bottom, was infected with this black racial identity consciousness. Why don't we start off with the easy one, the Department of Justice? Why are so many black people in prison? Because white racism and black identity. What about, ditto for schools. Why are so many black students expelled and suspended? Because of white racism, picking on black people for no reason whatsoever. Why is black academic performance so far behind white and Asian students in schools of all kinds? Because of white racism inflicted on black people all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. What about colleges? This whole idea of relentless black victimization, that's the central organizing feature of something called critical race theory. This is gospel on most college campuses in this country. Whenever there's a riot, we always trot out the professors to put a microphone in front of their face, and they explain to us all about 400 years of oppression and this and that and microaggressions. I was listening to NPR the other day. They're doing a story about black colleges, and they did a story. They were talking to one young lady who transferred from a white college to Howard University down in Washington, D.C., a black college. And she said the reason she transferred out is because she couldn't handle all the microaggressions that white people were doing to her all the time at her old college. So she wanted a safe space where she could do whatever it is black people do that gives them an identity and keeps them separate from white people. This is a very long list of black identity that's infused into our daily life, so much so that it's now mainstream. Let's finish up this federal government thing. At the military academies, they teach They teach white supremacy and white privilege. At the EPA, they talk about environmental racism. At school, at the Department of Education, President Obama put out an initiative called Excellence in Education for African American Students. This was very, very explicit how these policies were going to be aimed at black people because somehow their experience is different, so they need special attention limited to them as black people. I mean, nobody's hiding this central, the central feature of blackness to a lot of black people. I mean, what about Ray Nagin, the former mayor of New Orleans? He called New Orleans a chocolate city. Could say the same thing about Detroit, St. Louis, Memphis, Baltimore, Washington, Philadelphia, parts of New York, Boston, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, Milwaukee, hundreds and hundreds of other cities around the country. The black thing is the central organizing feature of it. But no matter how much black activists and their white enablers at local newspapers are always trying to explain to us that celebrating black culture doesn't, it's a pure thing, it's a good thing, it doesn't have any dark side. No matter how many times they explain to us that to us, the fact is that for the pride in their blackness or the identifying people as black, the other side is it's the relentless quality of white racism and how it's always screwing up black people all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. I mean, just the other day, what did we see? We saw some 8-year-old children kneeling down for the national anthem at a kid football game. That's not something, that's not something kids know themselves. That's something they are taught from a very early age. And people learn this black on white hostility. People learn about the relentless nature of white racism at home, church, school, movies, music. It's constant. It's amazing how easy it is to overlook it. I mean, the NFL, the people kneeling down for the anthem in the NFL. Why are they kneeling down? They're kneeling down for a very specific reason. They're kneeling down to protest white racism and white brutality against black people, especially cops picking on black people all the time for no reason whatsoever. That's a black thing they're protesting. This black on white hostility is mainstream. I mean, you turn on NPR. I mean, it's so easy to find a story where they're talking about white racism and how widespread it is and how it's totally screwing up black people all over the country. Ditto MSNBC, ditto CNN, even on Fox. I keep forgetting his name, but one of the guys that's still hanging around Fox, he did a segment on Megyn Kelly. He's one of the guys on the couch with Fox and Friends. What's his name? Greg something or other? Brian Kilmeade. Anyway, he did a segment on Killer Mike, and people were a little surprised because Killer Mike had a video out called "When Are You Niggas Going to Unite and Kill the Police, Motherfucker?" And that's the refrain. So they just keep repeating that during the entire song. So Brian gets up there and does a segment on it. He interviews Killer Mike. Of course, Killer Mike says, "Oh, no, man, you got it all wrong. Just because I said one of you niggas going to unite and kill the police, motherfucker, I didn't mean nothing bad about it." And Greg comes back and reports to Megyn Kelly that Killer Mike is actually a very nice guy. I don't know how anybody could ever misunderstand him. That's Fox. If it's that bad on Fox, I mean, what do you think the rest of the networks are like? And so when they use the word extremists, I mean, if everybody's down with the cause of relentless black victimization, then what's an extremist? Okay, the extremists are the ones attacking cops. But there are so many people doing that now, it almost goes unremarked. Just the other night, 3 cops hit with bricks in St. Louis. Is that a big deal? No, it was during one of these Black Lives Matter spin-off group demonstrations. I mean, that's just how black people roll now. They throw bricks at cops, and nobody seems to care. Let's not forget our buddy down in Jackson, Mississippi, The city councilman who didn't like the fact that white cops were chasing black criminals into Jackson. He said he was going to encourage all the black people in Jackson to throw rocks and bricks and bottles at them, because he was going to protect our black babies. Does that seem like a sickness to you? Does that guy seem like he's an extremist to you? He's an extremist. He's not an extremist. He's mainstream. But he's one of the guys advocating violence against cops. Just like this thing says. I mean, in this bulletin they put out, they talk about the guy. I love this. I love the story. I love the way the Daily News characterizes this. They go, well, you know, they talked about the guy down in Dallas who killed 5 cops during an otherwise peaceful Black Lives Matter rally. I mean, do people even like read their own copy when they write this stuff? It was peaceful except for the 5 people who got killed. And they mentioned Ferguson. Those riots were peaceful until they were not. And the black identity extremism, which is mainstream now, has been, you know, we see it growing and we see it becoming mainstream. I mean, the hands up, don't shoot is a perfect example of that. It took the Washington Post almost a year to post a story saying, oh yeah, remember that hands up, don't shoot thing down in Ferguson that everybody was having a big riot about? Oh yeah, that never happened. Sorry about that. How many thousands of reporters accepted that without checking it, without knowing it was true? How many thousands? Is there another example of another topic where people aggressively and actively, proactively lie about something as often as the topic of race and racial violence and black identity extremism? The answer is no. We see that every day. Ask a cop. Ask him if what kind of how they're experiencing black people these days. I mean, cops go in to get a sandwich. People spit in their food. People refuse to serve them. People call them out. People punch them. So the black identity extremists are not extremists. They're mainstream. The consequences of this black identity extremism and their inevitable belief in the relentless quality of white racism has enormous consequences for black on white violence in this country that is so wildly out of proportion, so wildly unacknowledged all over the country. So rather than just talk about what that looks like, let's see what that looks like in real life.
Tonight at 5, the search is over for the teenager who deputies say shot another teen in the face. But as ABC Action News reporter Wendy Lane shows us, the victim has a long road to recovery, and deputies are still trying to find out why.
Deputies are investigating what led up to 17-year-old Christian Fitzgerald shooting Brianna Goebel late last night at the Springhaven Apartments in Spring Hill.
I mean, I don't know if you ever watch scary movies. I watched one in my whole life, and that's what it reminded me of.
Kathy Cancel lives in Springhaven Apartments. She says last night, just after 9:30, she thought she heard a firework and went outside by the pool.
She was right over here.
Then heard screaming.
She was laying there choking.
The girl on the ground, 18-year-old Brianna Goebel, shot in the face.
She was in pain. She was trying to talk. We knew that.
Goebel's family released this picture saying the bullet shattered her teeth, gums, first vertebrae, and skull before exiting through her neck.
Very, very sad because I see that face.
Hernando County Sheriff Al Nienhuis says the shooter was Christian Fitzgerald.
Mr. Fitzgerald is the suspect in this.
The sheriff's office is not releasing a motive, but says the two did know each other. After searching overnight, the sheriff's office...
We're learning new details about a man murdered in Beckley.
Police are charging Camille Brown in the murder of Ron Browning over the weekend. Browning's body was discovered by his wife outside his home on Odessa Avenue on Saturday. On that same day, just half a mile away, Mascot police arrested Camille Brown on breaking and entering charges. Now police say the two are connected. According to court documents, Brown later confessed to officers that she killed a man with gray hair earlier in the day.
She told police it happened near her home on Westwood Drive, which runs parallel to the street where Browning was found dead. Browning worked as a volunteer and chaplain at Raleigh General Hospital. Some of his co-workers there are in shock hearing the news.
I was devastated. Disbelief. I'm sorry. Okay. He just had a way of knowing if you were having a bad day to, try to make you feel better.
Peyton says Browning is no stranger to tragedy, having lost his son and his daughter.
Today, his co-workers honored his life by placing a wreath in the main foyer.
Boy, this last story out of West Virginia is a real winner. So this 19-year-old black woman knocks on the door of a minister's house. The guy was a minister, a Boy Scout leader. I mean, he was a guy that was always trying to do the right thing. Never hurt anybody. Helped a lot of people. This girl went into his house and killed him during a robbery. By the way, you know what they said? They said, oh yeah, she was smoking pot. That made her violent. But what's weird about this case is what happened during the sentencing, which just happened a day or so ago. Here comes the judge talking to this young killer. I have to recognize what you did was horrible, but I also have to recognize you have some positives in your life. Brown she was a prostitute and she used drugs. But other than that, she had no criminal history prior to the murder. And, quote, many members of the community showed their support for her throughout the case. Translation, lots of black people showed up to try to get the judge to go easy on her. That's black identity. That's black identity extremism masquerading now as mainstream thought. What about all these hotshot authors? What about Ta-Nehisi Coates? National Book Award. He writes a book, basically says, yeah, white people suck, especially white cops. And, that's like his meal ticket now. So what he does now, he travels the country speaking at all these high dollar events where rich white people hire him to tell them that other rich people, white people outside of the room, not the ones in the room, are really, really bad racist people. Ditto for this guy, Dr. Kendry, I think his name is Lamar Kendry, which we just did the other day. He's the most recent winner of the National Book Award, wrote the same kind of book, same kind of denial, deceit, and delusion about black criminality. Same kind of fairy tales about white racism and black victimization. These books are on our college and high school classrooms now by the tens of thousands. What about the new Jim Crow? All these, very famous book now. Again, popular in college and high school campuses, required reading. Lots and lots of black people in prison for no reason whatsoever. I remember the first time I was on the radio with Jesse Lee Peterson. I thought I'd watch a couple of his YouTube videos before I went on the air with him just to figure out what he was all about. And I was shocked. I mean, I had scales falling from my eyes. So in Jesse's videos, the ones that I saw, Jesse, of course, is also a pastor and a preacher. And he was preaching to a group of white people, and he was telling them that, listen, you guys are so busy worrying about your own white racism, this one little molecule of white racism you have inside of you, you're not paying attention to the enormous amount of black and white hostility that's out there. Black people are just not that into you. This is all about black identity. So you call it extremism, I call it mainstream. I think it was 3 years ago when Thomas Sowell wrote his first column about good old Colin. I didn't know he was going to write it. So he says, he's talking about a race war. He said, I'm glad I'm in my 80s now. I will never live to see how bad this whole thing gets, this race war, because there's an enormous amount of black on white violence in this country, and reporters aren't reporting it. It's being ignored, denied, condoned, excused, encouraged, even lied about. And then he dropped the sentence that basically changed my life for a long time. He goes, yeah, and if you want any proof of that, just go read those books by that dude Colin Flaherty. And he started quoting my books, saying, reminding everybody that he was supposed to be the king of this, and he is. But he said this guy Colin Flaherty, he's dug up more stuff than I have. I don't know if the FBI was reading Thomas Sowell back then. They should have been. I don't know if they were reading White Girl Bleed a Lot and Don't Make the Black Kids Angry back then. It wouldn't have killed them had they done so. But now all of a sudden the FBI has discovered there's an enormous amount of black hostility and violence and murder directed at cops, and they're starting to let people know. Of course, the pushback on this story today is immediate and predictable. I think it was Gentleman's Quarterly, GQ, did a big story saying it's just a made-up term for something that does not exist, because everybody knows the big threat of racial violence in this country comes from the white nationalists of Charlottesville, Virginia, and the Ku Klux Klan. Lots and lots of that on MSNBC, CNN, NPR, lots and lots of newspaper editorials around the country, all denying this black hostility that cops see every minute of every day, but they cannot say a word about it, or else they'll lose their job for violating what is now the first and only rule of police work in America. Don't make the black kids angry.